All right. So we're diving in and we are talking about the three mistakes that new nutrition coaches make in their coaching career. And just because, loosely speaking, I'm going to be fairly silent on this one, I'm going to go in with mistake number zero for everybody just to have a little bit of fun. Andrew, do you know what this one is?
Don't eat lunch.
Don't eat lunch. You forget to tell your client to skip lunch. And that's the biggest mistake you're making. 100%.
Honestly, I mean, we could always go with the OMAD diet, one meal a day. Some people really thrive with that. I think I personally prefer that for whatever reason. It is easier because I do like to get into bed with a full stomach. And they say gastric emptying 2 hours before, it's going to mess with your sleep. I sleep like a damn baby. Granted, I've had some very particular professional experiences that have probably made that a necessity to be able to eat while you're on the move and sleep while you're on the move. And so I may not necessarily be the best candidate for coaches to extrapolate, but I do want to say, Steve said the three mistakes. We are saying the top three mistakes. These are the three things that coaches, in our experience as educators and mentors, that we've seen repeatedly, time and time again, right? So I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Brandon at this point. After we've established zero is don't eat lunch, don't be a chump. Clearly that's tongue in cheek. Please don't take that as holy grail because we don't actually
There's
mean that.
context there. And if you need to understand the story, you're going to have to find it in one of our other episodes.
Hit story time. Start digging. Brandon, what do people mess up?
Yeah, I think for as what I've seen and just have heard over the years, I think that one of the biggest mistakes is that as it's overcomplicating the plan for their clients, and so what that looks like, it's just giving them everything, the whole. Is it the right? Is this the phrase? Giving them the whole hog.
The
That
whole
is
I
kit and caboodle.
whole hog and
kitchen
caboodle.
sink, kitchen
Whole
sink.
kitchen
Yep.
sink before their clients are ready. And so, you'll see a lot of people who are like maybe just looking losing a couple pounds. Maybe it's for just just to, doctor told them to lose a few pounds. Maybe they want to look a little better for an upcoming vacation or wedding or something like that. And then the coach gives them hey, here, by the way, here's a meal plan that's 2,400 calories, 200 grams of protein, blah, 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 blah. And the client's just like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. Like, I just was told that the keto diet was the best way to lose weight. And now you're throwing me all these numbers. And so now there's also a disconnect. And I think the biggest thing is that, again, we'll cut this part out. I was going to refer back into an episode, but I'm not sure what order these are coming out in.
I mean, just reference the episode; it'll be fine.
Yeah, the where we overcomplicate it's very easy to overcomplicate things because we know what the client needs at the end of their nutrition journey or whatever journey they're on, but there's always going to be a step one that they need to achieve. And so for someone, yeah, they might just want to lose weight, getting down into the super basics. Even now when I talk to people about nutrition, it's like I take it away from nutrition immediately. I'm like, well, what's your work life schedule like? How is your stress levels? Are you drinking enough water? How's your sleep been? You got anything that's, well, how's your sleep been? Yeah, you're getting 8 hours. Do you wake up in the middle of the night? Things like that. And I mean, even those questions aren't even necessarily nutrition related, but a lot of times, if you're able to just take a step back, take a look at the bigger picture and see what is really going on first before you're making any of those type of overcomplicated macro manipulations and things like that. Where I think even talking about, let's talk about my dad real quick. All he did was just start taking in 10,000 or start doing 10,000 steps a day and cut out soda. He didn't track any calories, didn't track any of his meals or anything like that. Lost 16 pounds in the course of a year just from doing the little things here and there. And so the littlest changes can really make the biggest, can result in the biggest outcomes. I guess, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, sometimes we overcomplicate it. I had a coach once, he gave me 220 grams of protein right off the bat, no rhyme or reason. I asked him about it. He's just like, I like my athletes to be lean. I'm like, I'm eating more protein than I am carbs. It didn't make any sense to me. I even did my own like dive into the literature to see. I'm like, is there any like basis for his claims? And it was just like, I mean, I knew what I knew, and I was even like, this is too complicated for me to understand or understand why we're giving me 220 grams. I was weighing about 175 at the time for context, so it was a lot for me. I was drinking like 2 3 protein shakes a day because I'm like, I can't get in that much. I probably could, but I didn't want to buy that much chicken and stuff. So, but yeah, oh, don't overcomplicate it. Take a step back and take a big look at the client first before moving forward. And because if it's too complicated, it also might be too hard for them to follow. And if they can't adhere, they can't see results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I think that for me, the top thing that I see most people go through is very similar in terms of they don't take time to establish the context. And this is why we see that there are so many different protocols out there that people mistakenly take on because they overheard that it works for someone else. When in reality, that someone else may have a very specific set of circumstances as to why that was the best approach they could have taken. And having those template approaches without understanding from an assessment basis, like if you're not doing a nutritional assessment, which I love and just giving this one out there away for free, my favorite nutritional assessment is really just having people log for anywhere from 1 to 7 days. If they don't want to log, we can literally sit there on the consultation. I will pull up the app that I prefer to use, which is called Chronometer. And we don't get any kickback from that. It really is just the most comprehensive platform out there from a food nutrition perspective that really helps a lot of coaches understand what their clients are consuming and where the nutritional deficiencies may exist based upon those. And it's significantly more thorough because it's based for, I think it was originally supposed to be for the clinical setting. But having people sit there doing the assessment of what are you currently consuming frequently, what nutrients might you be missing, and we know that in the presence of nutritional deficiencies, signs and symptoms of a lack of wellness will start to exist. They'll start to show up. People will start to feel fatigued. They can even be implicated in things like depression or poor libido, right? So it's interesting that if we look at how people feel, oftentimes we find that that is tied to micronutrient status. When we understand how they look, it's tied to macronutrient status, but we don't want to start managing and manipulating all those things until we've truly figured out what is normal, what is average for this person, right? I'm sure that we would all agree that measuring progress is really important. But if we don't know where we're starting, it's really troublesome to actually measure that progress, And I would say that, again, assessment, setting that context is why the operational use of an assessment is so important. And it doesn't matter if it's fitness, it doesn't matter if it's relationship building. There are assessments for fitness, for movement screening, for anaerobic, metabolism, for aerobic performance, for nutrient deficiencies. And so having them log their food, looking at that, and it'll literally tell you percentage basis. This is where their vitamins are. This is where their minerals are. This is where their antioxidant consumption looks like. This is where their whatever, right? And I think there's 10 different domains. It can be a little bit overwhelming for the client initially, and that's where I think a lot of the training them to give you that good feedback is part of the coaching process and why the context matters so much. And I would also say that to piggyback off the context, when Steve and I first started working together, I remember we were sitting in a hotel gym, and I think this was in Washington, D.C. And we were doing some shitty little hotel workout because we were like, there's only a set of 50, and we really didn't know each other well at the time. And there was another coworker in there as well. It was Dan. And I remember the question came up. So should I eat white rice or sweet potatoes? I mean, that there we are like, I mean, whatever, like doesn't matter, And Steve, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, having been removed. We are about 3 years since we've had that conversation. What would you say as a consumer of all the stuff that you were hearing and all the stuff that on social media that helps you form that impression? Like, what was your experience with that? And
Now I eat bagels. Now it's neither.
I love it. Yeah.
I think as a kid growing up through the age where carbs are bad, doing the Atkins diet and things like that. Um, but on the other side of it, being in the industry as long as I have, I know you need carbs and they're a part of what you're supposed to consume. But the reality is there's so much information coming at you. And you're like, man, what am I trying to solve? And, okay, well, eat this, it's not good, eat that, it's better, complex, simple, all the things. And it's really easy to take something that is supposed to be simple and overcomplicate it. And at the end of the day, the context of the question was eat more carbs. Okay. How do I eat more carbs? Whichever one's easier to shove in your mouth. Now, 3 years later, as we go down this road, it's probably some version of like, all right, have rice once a week, have a sweet potato twice a week, have a bagel sometimes. Now eat a giant salad with a bunch of extra veggies on there with some croutons for your carbs. Like, the spice of food is the spice of variety is the spice of life, right? And it's good for your gut and it's good for all those things. But I couldn't have said and known all that 3 years ago because I needed to solve the first thing, which was eat more carbohydrates. So I think the idea of don't overcomplicate it from a consumer point of view is an extremely valuable one because our shit's already really complicated in our head.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you shared that, this was 3 years ago and trying to figure it out and get on the board in the first place. But to share with listeners, like one of your first goals was more obstacle course related, right? And it was a performance thing. And so we had this assessment that we ran and we compared what we were getting from a training output perspective against were we making progress in that. And so that's where, again, I think that establishing that baseline assessment of like, what's the performance? And if it helps you, great, then that's probably going to be something that's beneficial for you. And that's regardless of the goal. If you want to feel better, if you want to look better, like, does it help you feel better? Does it help you look better? And if it doesn't, that's the most bare bones assessment you can do is what are you doing? What are you getting? And what are you going to change? And that's the coaching cycle. Now, ideally, if you identify what you want and then what are you doing? What are you getting? And what are you going to change? Like that is a pretty comprehensive coaching strategy that doesn't require a lot of acumen as long as you have enough time. But some people don't want to wait the 2 years for them to figure out like what are you doing, what are you getting, because the nuanced variables come up during those coaching conversations. But I would say, yeah, it seems like assessment and context are really important. Brandon, second one.
Yeah, I think this one too, it kind of ties into it with not overcomplicating things. But it's just you're what is that? What's the right word? Neglecting the individual as a whole. And so I kind of, I guess, yeah, touching on that where, yeah, my old coach, my old coach, I don't know why I kind of went to a weird accent there. My old coach, 220 grams. Again, I'm like, what's the context here? I feel like this is a kind of a what's it called, a paper, it's like a templated plan almost that he gave out to people, and kind of when I was looking at it, and that really is, I think, a big thing that it's very easy to throw out with, especially now, social media, everything. I even remember a couple years ago, I mean, even now you still see it, but again, keto and intermittent fasting, I think, are two of the biggest things that are still talked about, that were big trends, I'd say, about eight that started about 5, 8, 10 years ago. And I remember reading about them when I was in high school. And I remember keto being like, yeah, do this for about 6 to 8 weeks because you'll start seeing some effects. And I was like, okay, cool. And I tried it out. I made pizza out of 100% fat cheese, or the fattiest cheese, put sauce on it, put more cheese on it, and put pepperonis on it. I was like, this is cool, but my
Gout.
mouth just feels, yeah. I mean, that's where it all starts. Started from. But the keto thing, it was like, for me, it wasn't sustainable. I couldn't adhere to it. I was like making weird food. I was eating a ton of cauliflower and I didn't really enjoy it. And so that's where it really needs to be individualized. I ended up doing intermittent fasting for a while, and I actually really enjoyed that. I did that during my college years. I'd wake up at like 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning because I didn't have anything going on until like the afternoons because I was smart about choosing my classes. And so I would wake up, didn't necessarily need to eat. And kind of like Andrew said earlier, I liked feeling full or having food in my stomach when going to sleep. So I would try to eat later. I would eat about around two. My protocol at the time was like 2 to 8. But now it kind of became like a I don't know. I just got used to it, so I actually don't naturally eat now until like 9 or 10. I just kind of eat when I'm hungry. But it's again, everyone's gonna react differently. And I used to be really big on intermittent fasting. Like, hey, you should do intermittent fasting if you want to lose weight. But someone's like, I don't know. I actually have a hard time getting food in my system as it is. Like my brother
Yeah.
is like that, and so he would be he's already having a hard time hitting his calorie goals. Now getting him restricted into an 8 hour or 6 hour
Yeah.
whatever window it may be would be almost more detrimental, because now we're just making it harder for him, and
Yeah.
kind of individualize. And another example too, that for I guess I'll pass it over to you. Was talking to one of my friends' moms about her nutrition, and for her, she's Filipino, and for her, she was saying her doctor was telling her to cut out all white rice. And so I bring up the Filipino part because that is that's a very strong preferred cultural food. That's like their
Mhm.
uh, bagels, I guess, to New Yorkers, let's say something like that. But they telling someone not to eat white rice in Japanese or Filipino culture, because I'm Filipino and Japanese, is like saying like I'd rather die. I'm pretty Americanized, so I can eat. If you told me I can't eat white rice, it's on the other world. But if you told me I can eat pizza, I'm going to have some problems. But with that being said, she's moved here from the Philippines. And then for her, she was talking to me like, how can I still eat white rice if, like this is like a big deal? Like it is a very cultural, like big part. It's a big part of our culture. We eat it every like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and even so, a situation like that, be like, sorry, get rid of it because your doctor said so,
Yeah.
type of, and it's all or nothing. And, that's it's unfortunate that she whatever her conditions were where she had to not eat white rice. But we didn't have to go all in. I even told her like um reduce it. You don't have to eat a whole cup of white rice. How about half a cup? And then a little trick was throwing in cauliflower rice. It adds volume. And I talked to her a year later, and she like, I started doing that, and honestly, yeah, I can't even tell the difference. And so, again, very, very individualized when it comes to working with people, because yeah, everyone's going to have different tastes and have different preferences. And just to generalize it, it's like, yeah, well, here's what you should eat. Here's the best diet. And it's like, no, not really. Someone may even be like, I actually just hate the taste of olive oil. It's
Yeah.
like, well, sorry, you got to do
Yeah.
keto. It's like, I don't think
Yeah.
so. So I think that's another big mistake too, with a lot of new mistakes that people make when they're working with clients. Is everyone's kind of the same. Everyone's this canvas that they are like, all right, let's paint this thing, and then we'll correct the
Uh,
blotches later on once those come around, when they come out like, I actually really don't like eating grains, or actually I have celiac disease, I can't actually eat grains. And so it's like, oh, how are you going to get your carb sources in? Well, and kind of being able to adapt and all that aspect. But yeah, I think it's a lot of times it's very easy to just blanket statements, throw it out across the population, and then that's where you start seeing people try out all these different diets. And you kind of get this yo-yo dieting culture when it's not individualized, because yeah, sometimes the best way, again, kind of, I think the theme with all these episodes is just getting to know the person and asking them the right questions so that we can best serve them, that's beneficial for them.
Yeah, it's I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of just understanding how that person is going to best respond. Alan Aragon in his book Flexible Dieting presents this subject, and I'm sure it's also in literature, because they talk about flexible versus rigid dieting methods. And this is where basically some people may need a very well regimented, very specific plan to follow. And that's how they thrive. They need that structure, right? And there are other people that may need the flexible dieting, or kind of if it fits your macros, like here are the overall goals. And I think that brings me to my second point here of the things that I think most coaches really probably make a mistake with, is having very weak client feedback loops. We know that, and having worked with 23,000 coaches, and the most common question is, what happens if I get their BMR and their total daily energy expenditure wrong right out of the gate? And everyone's trying to find the perfect formula around energy balance. And at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't really matter because you're going to have to change it so frequently anyway. That's where, for me, I would prefer before even calculating these things, although they are helpful to know, but understanding what their current series of behaviors are looking at, right? Steve, can I share about your original calorie consumption? So, guys, I mean, to give you a frame of reference, Steve is a jacked muscle god, right? And he's fucking right strong. And when I first happened upon Steve, how many calories were you consuming? Do you remember?
I mean, I would overeat some days and get to like 1,400 calories a day.
Overeating. He was averaging 1,270 calories a day. Steve, how many are you eating now?
Uh, geez. Well, maintenance is sitting around 2,450.
Double. Double. Stronger, faster, healthier than ever. Testosterone levels up through the roof. I mean, like it's really crazy to
Yeah,
think
and my
that.
food bill's more expensive now. Thanks,
And the
Andrew.
food bill goes up, so there are some trade-offs that you're going to have to consider. And that actually is a really great assessment too, because when we talk about assessments, it's not just physiological, it's not just nutrient based. There are socioeconomic variables you want to consider, because if you're telling someone that may be scraping their last pennies together to be able to afford you that they need to go buy organic because it's going to have less toxicity in it, that's not appropriate, because now they're going to have to figure out and make those trade-offs. So there are also resource constraints that people that are very thorough coaches will take into consideration. Not everyone needs to be on 17 different supplements. Please, for the love of God, if it's more than 3 to 5 and you're not being medically treated for something, like, you may need to just re-examine some of the behaviors around the health. But you won't know what's working, what's not working without the appropriate feedback loop. Now, this is where some coaches will sit there and they'll do this spreadsheet coaching. I'm not the biggest fan of that, because 55% of communication comes from actually seeing body language, right? If I turn sideways, not interested. If I lean in, probably interested. If I cross my arms, not receptive. If I have open body language. So you start to really pick up a lot of cues, especially in a consultation setting, on whether you can even have the right environment to make an offer. So thinking about that, feedback loops, number one most important thing. Spreadsheet coaching, meaning you give them the plan, and once a week you check in with them via email. You're going to only get 7% of the feedback that you need, because only 7% of communication comes from the words you pick. 55 comes from the body language. 38% of your communication comes from tonality, how you say things, right? If I say, sure, right, you probably know that that's being condescending or maybe even sarcastic. But if I'm like, sure, no, I totally get that, you can tell that there's a more amenable, like, genuine tone to that. And you wouldn't be able to pick that up oftentimes in email, although I will say that emojis do make a lot of that a lot more effective. But collecting some kind of pre-consultation information is going to be helpful for asking the right questions when you get on a call with them. If you can't do face-to-face in person, do a Zoom call, do a FaceTime, do something like that. And I promise you, you're going to build more trust and rapport with your clients, and you're going to take away so much more and really be able to refine that plan so much more effectively. Again, if you can actually look this person in the eyes, if you can watch how they interact, if you can watch how they behave, you might even change the plan completely if you see that they're completely shut down and maybe they just need to talk to you. But you won't know that unless you actually have that face-to-face communication or feedback loop that tells you, hey, remember, what are you doing? What are you getting? What are you doing? What are you getting? What are you doing? What are you getting? Repetitively, forever, in everything. So that's probably my second thing that I would belabor. I mean, Steve, anything that you would like to add to feedback loops, having, with your other brand, Metric Mentor Labs, you guys obviously have a lot of feedback loops that are pretty imperative.
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to listening and building something for somebody, but also there's a balance, right? Like, Brandon, like, hey, don't do one thing for what you do for everybody. And my
Yeah.
just in case nobody's gotten this, I'm the least qualified to give nutrition advice out of the three of us here. So this is my take this advice, but it's not legal advice and not investing advice kind of diatribe. Um, but that all said, I think there has to be a generalization that you start with on certain things, i.e., get the formula as close as you can and do your best to understand it. And there's this generalization. And generally speaking, you should have 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight that you want with somebody, or 0.8 0.8 grams per kilogram or 1.3 or whatever your formula is telling you, right? And there is going to be a generalized structure, but there's probably a category of generalizations and assumptions that can and should be made, i.e., how much protein somebody should have. Whereas there's probably other things that should be outside of that, and they need to be very dependent upon your feedback loops. My first nutrition coach was like, hey, go eat these things. And I'm like, why? I don't understand. Like, there's all this stuff. And if you want me to take action, I need to know why. It's just simply put, I have to understand it because it's an education process that for me that motivates me to take action on certain things. First coach was like, yeah, just do this. I'm like, he's like, oh, I eat bagels and eggs in the morning. I'm like, I can't eat bagels. They're not good for you. I need to eat rice or sweet potatoes, I think, you know? And, but it was one of those things where it was never explained. And it was never explained because there was never a listening of what things I need to kind of go through to reach my goal. So, as I look through that stuff and you see the goals change, i.e., I'm going to go run obstacle course races. Well, Steve, you're going to have to eat a lot of carbs in order to make all that happen. Now, today, I can jam away on some carbs, but it just, you need to be able to have those conversations. And I think those conversations are almost your template of like, hey, what are some of the questions I'm going to start asking as I go into this coaching relationship that will hopefully open up the next level questions? Because we know the surface question, the first answer we get is bullshit anyways. So we need to continue to dive under there until we get the real thing. And that would be kind of the thing that I might throw out as I'm listening to this from the outside in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing what you're asking, knowing where to take the conversation, I think that is really imperative. However, I also will say that that comes from experience. And so if you reference one of our previous episodes, we talk about really just staying and letting the problem unfold in front of you. And that's where having those core things of like, did you do what you're supposed to do this week? I think that's a great universal question because if you didn't do the plan, what happened? And that's where you can start to solve that problem as a tactical thing. Like you didn't drink your water. Why? Got too busy, forgot. Okay, cool. Are you open to trying something new? Let's put 7 water bottles on your desk. Your job is to finish those every day. And people are like, okay, and I think that that definitely gives you that steering work, which you're so eloquently putting. Um, Brandon, what's your third and final one?
Yeah, and again, kind of piggybacks off of what you guys were saying too, but it's um, the ignoring the behavioral changes and the mindset that the client is going through. Because again, this is all new to them, and so we have to really put ourselves back in their shoes. Like, okay, I know how much water I should be drinking. Roughly about half my body weight in ounces, and 10-20%. I'm in Phoenix, so it's hot, and I exercise, so bump that number up a little bit. Cool. I know how to get there. Well, someone that's like, I think I drink 2 cups of water a day. I'm like, well, you weigh about 200 pounds. So we're talking a fraction. Are you even sure you're drinking 2 cups of water? Or is that just, what you think you're drinking? You're like, oh, I drink a hydro flask. And like, that could be 16 ounces. That could be 40 ounces. It kind of depends. But
Why you got to
it's,
call me out, bro?
I
Like,
was,
come on now.
I was, oh yeah, it looks like a good 32 ounce right there. It's good. Drink a few more of those. Um, but I mean, yeah, and that's the thing where you can you can catch a fish and give it to him, or you can teach a man to fish, and he'll have a lot better success in the long run. And I think that's something where um, teaching these behavioral changes is going to be ultimately in the long run better for your clients and really in the end better for yourself as well because you have this social proof now where it's like, yeah, this guy helped me help me establish these changes. I honestly had no idea where to start. And again too, meeting your client where they're at, because they, not to get too much into psychology of it all, but like the trans theoretical model of change. And so, someone may be in the contemplation stage where they're like, thinking about wanting to make some changes, and you're like, here we go, implement your carbs every day. And they're just like, I'm still even trying to figure out, what my goals are. Like, do I even want to do, you told me I gotta go to the gym, but I actually really like biking. And so they're still kind of trying to figure that out, meeting them where they're at. Cause again, the worst thing we can do is just make those assumptions based off and I guess going back into all that, we sometimes want we want the client to win more than they do at times. And I think if we are able to get that in line with the clients, with what they want, we both win. They're happy, we're happy because they're happy, and that's uh, boom, business is booming because we're able to get the results that our clients are wanting. But establishing those behavioral changes over time is going to take them a lot further than just here you go, here's your macros, and good luck try and figure out how you're going to hit 220 grams of protein, which
God,
happened to
that's
me. Which happened to me.
for those of you that aren't aware, that's closer to like 40 ounces of steak. It's disgusting. I think that's 28 ounces of chicken. Like it's kind of wild. But no, I mean, yeah, I think that that's absolutely valid. And, I think that the third thing for me, as we kind of bring this to a close, is I think a lot of coaches think that they know better for their client. And that really creates an adversarial relationship that's not really open to collaboration. And that's happening. Again, going back to the assessment, you might have a toxic coaching relationship if you don't take your client's words for it, or if you label your clients as lazy or they don't want it. I find that this happens a lot with new coaches, or they're like, I had this perfect, beautiful plan, but they're non compliant, which, to be frank, I'm not a big fan of the word compliance. It traditionally implies that you are getting someone to do something that they don't inherently need to do. They don't want to do, excuse me. And it's more of a form of manipulation. Now, granted, it's semantics, but we do want to keep that in the back of our head of we want to take a client-centered approach because we know that no one knows, or no, excuse me, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that means the first thing you should really focus on outside of just assessing and establishing a baseline to measure change is building trust to build the relationship. Otherwise, you're going to find that you have less buy-in. Your clients don't want to do the things that you're going to suggest, and it's going to be very frustrating for both you and the client. And I don't know if you understand this or not, as the consumers that are listening, but consider why you've quit things in the past. Generally speaking, it's because you're frustrated. And if you're frustrated, that's because you expected something that didn't happen, or maybe someone overpromised and underdelivered, which is why that is such a prominent saying when it comes to business, is that we want to take the time to set the appropriate expectation. And then we want to build trust and show that we will actually care about these individuals beyond what they're doing from a planning perspective. So in order to build the relationship, the tactical thing that I suggest most people do is learn what their kids' names are, learn what their hobbies are, learn what they do in their free time, and ask them about those things. Take a genuine human interest. And by the way, bonus points from a skill level perspective, if you can find something that both of you enjoy, that both of you relate to. And in fact, I had a client named Alice, and Alice was she was a little bit heavier, right? She was an executive at a communication company, lovely lady, one of my absolutely favorite clients, right? And she wanted to lose some weight, and she had some health complications arise. And naturally, like you would assume, me, her being her, we might not have the most stuff in common, but we really bonded over TV shows. And they had this thing called the Doom Patrol. They had Game of Thrones, like all these things were the content of what we would discuss during our sessions together. And they made them so much more enjoyable for both of us. And so I say, try to find the commonalities, try to locate some version of yourself in your client to create a genuine, authentic relationship and curiosity that has you genuinely want to support this person through this goal of their life. And that is what I would suggest for people to build that relationship, build that trust, and ultimately afford yourself the opportunity to allow that client to have enough time to do the plan for it to actually work. So, Steve, anything about relationships or anything as we wrap up here?
I think your comment of nobody cares what you know until they know how much you care. At the end of the day, everybody has their different way to go about creating a relationship, and for
Mhm.
me, that's always something that served me very well in my career.
Right, right.
But being able to know that somebody actually cares about you, the human, is the thing that I believe opens you up to just kind of being honest about something that for most people is probably a really hard conversation to have of, hey, I need help, but I also feel a certain way maybe about myself and where I want to go. Um, so I think that relationship thing, asking the questions, diving in through those pieces is going to be the core of building what is going to be a successful coaching relationship and helping somebody actually achieve the results that they're looking for. So I would just really mainly echo what you guys are saying more than anything else.
Trust is the relational currency to get your clients to do the things they need to do. No trust, coaching's a bust. Not in a fun way. So, any closing remarks, Brandon? Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners as we talk about and wrap up the top 3 coaching mistakes in the nutrition world that people should be aware of?
I think a wise man once said,
He said nothing.
"Do
That's wise. That's wise as fuck.
do less to do more." And I really think, yeah, that's the biggest takeaway from all of this is, yeah, we sometimes care too much. And I think we will do above and beyond, but sometimes, yeah, when I mean, again, we kind of what we talked about in the very beginning of this. You have the perfect meal plan for them, calories, macro goals, micro goals, even down to the fiber intake, how much you need, and they don't even know what a carb source is or what a protein source is. So take a step back, do less, and I think you really will see the results if we're able to meet more clients where they're at. Do less to do more.
I love that. Yeah. Slow down, do less is always, it helps people focus because if you're going so fast all the time, this is where people make mistakes. This is where people, and I think Craig Liebenson was, I think he's a physical therapist in LA. Um, but he had this really great saying from an athletic performance perspective because he dealt a lot with injured athletes and stuff. And I think it rings true across coaching in general is that speed hides need. And this is where when you're trying to even quickly build a business, you're going to create a lot of things that if you continue to move forward, you're going to have a very shaky foundation. And that's where I think that when we talk about boundaries, even setting the expectation, hey, client, I'm not going to be available at midnight to help you pick out which gin and tonic is going to be the best for you. Right. But if you tell them, hey, I'm going to be always available, which a lot of new coaches want to be there. They want to be accessible. They want to over deliver on the experience and basically be this person's pocket chat GPT. But that actually really erodes a lot of their autonomy. And so I think that if you want to be a successful coach these days, you have to create a sense of confidence in your clients that they are capable. And that means that sometimes you have to let them productively struggle. Now, if you don't have trust, you don't have an assessment, and you don't have a clear direction, that is not going to be or lend itself to a productive struggle. And in fact, you're going to create a lot of frustration because they don't think you have their back and they think they're being set up to look stupid. And no one wants to feel that way. But here it is. It takes 20 hours of exposure. And there's a great TED talk on this. I'll link it in the show notes. So 20 hours of exposure to become baseline competent. And when I say that, it means 20 hours to not feel stupid doing something where you start to feel comfortable doing it. Doesn't mean you're great at it. But if you practice 1 hour a day for 3 weeks, that is going to allow you to feel more comfortable. Right now, you condense it, obviously shorter. You expand it, there's probably a decrease in the learning outcomes. But this is why doing habit-based coaching, you want to give people the opportunity to really afford and have the time to practice. So all that to say, slow down, do less is going to be one of the best ways to create longevity inside of a client relationship. So Steve, anything from you as we wrap up?
Nothing really on this one. I feel like you guys nailed it on the head.
All righty. Well, y'all, another episode in the books at here at Beyond the Pump. So as always, like, share, and subscribe. If you really enjoyed this episode, please share with someone that you think would really benefit from the information. The more you guys share, the more we can really focus on bringing you the valuable content that we have in our back pocket that maybe we just don't know you're looking for. So comment what you want. You can always email us, Steve at Beyond the Pump, Andrew at Beyond the Pump, Brandon at Beyond the Pump. We'd love to hear from you guys. And again, if you need anything, just reach out because you're only stuck if you don't ask for help. Until next time.